In the summer of 1969, Douglas Conway was 14 years old, living with his family on Oakcrest Avenue in Roanoke.
Extremely smart, the sort of very careful person, meticulous.
He was always reading either books or magazines, keeping up like with Life magazine and keeping up with what was going on.
What was going on that summer was Apollo 11, and like millions of other people around the world, he was captivated by the mission to the moon.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Dear Neil Armstrong, congratulations on your great historic flight, Conway wrote on August 8th. I am a 14-year-old boy who wishes he could have been right up there with you. In a handwritten letter, Conway asked Armstrong for a brief message and an autograph. How you doing, Doug, would be fine, he wrote. It would mean an awful lot to me, and I could always use it in school with great pride. And Conway wasn't alone. His letter is one of thousands Armstrong received in the months after the moon landing, and it's included in the book Dear Neil Armstrong, Letters to the First Man from All Mankind, written by Armstrong biographer James R. Hansen.
They told us some things about Neil, but they mostly told us about us, the people that, what Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon, meant to us.
What made Douglas Conway's message stand out were the circumstances his mother explained in a letter she included with her sons. What Douglas Conway didn't know, and what Nancy Conway shared with Armstrong, was that her son was dying. As I see the hours of his life run out, I would give him the moon if I could, Conway wrote. You are as near as I can come to giving him his greatest heart's desire.
And Neil wrote back immediately. Neil himself had a daughter that died of cancer when she was 2 years old, so he responded immediately.
Today, the letters are in West Lafayette, Indiana, part of a special collection at Purdue University.
Neil Armstrong was a 1955 graduate of Purdue, and he donated his personal papers to the university. The collection includes letters, an estimated 70,000 pages, that Armstrong received from admirers around the world.
The Conway correspondence, it was very human. I think that's what strikes you very deeply.
The letters that archivist Tracy Grimm showed us included Armstrong's response. I am always delighted to hear from our young people, especially those with your kind of interest, Armstrong wrote, and he included an autographed picture of the Apollo 11 crew.
That he would take the time to write this letter to this young boy. I mean, that was a special lesson to me.
Douglas Conway's older brother Vincent says the exchange could have ended there, but there's much more to the story, and we'll have that in part 2. Joe DeShiel, WDBJ-7.
Later, we will hear how Neil Armstrong's letter arrived in the final hours of Douglas Conway's life and what it meant to his mother and to members of his family 50 years later.
Douglas Conway was 14 years old in 1969, and the Roanoke teenager had just weeks to live when he sent a request to astronaut Neil Armstrong. The exchange is included in a new book about the letters Armstrong received following the first moon landing. And Joe DeShiel reports it sparked memories for members of Conway's family.
My mother and my brother, they were and are the special ones. And it was so meaningful to both of them, and thus it is meaningful to me.
Vincent Conway is talking about the letters his younger brother and his mother exchanged with Neil Armstrong in 1969. Douglas Conway asked the astronaut for a brief note and an autograph. Nancy Conway included her own message, explaining to Armstrong that her youngest son had a terminal illness. I thought that if you knew how little time he has left on this earth, and that it is within your power to give him the biggest moment of happiness in his short life, Nancy Conway wrote, perhaps you would be able to find a few moments in your overcrowded schedule to write a few words to him.
She had that way with words.
Vincent Conway is a retired judge, his wife Janetha a retired music teacher. We spoke with them at their home in Newport News after learning the correspondence from members of their family is included in the new book Dear Neil Armstrong, Letters to the First Man from All Mankind.
It was a shock, I mean, just out of the blue, and we hadn't really thought about that in many years.
The one sentence that jumped out at me is, if it were at all possible, I would give my son the moon. But you, Neil, are the closest thing I can come to. And then he responded. So her worth was affirmed as a mother, and his importance was affirmed as a son. So what better gift?
The letters that Douglas Conway and his mother wrote to Neil Armstrong are here at Purdue University. They're among Armstrong's personal papers, now housed in the Purdue archives and special collections.
Armstrong wanted the documents he donated to be available to the public, and archivist Tracy Grimm pulled the Conway letters for us to review.
It's the best part of my job. We see it all the time when students come in, or when a historian comes in, or a family member comes in and actually sees something that their relative or their ancestor, actually put down on paper. It's a connection that's very intimate and at the same time profound.
Included in the archive is the letter Nancy Conway sent to Armstrong in mid-September, after her son had died. Douglas wrote you that hearing from you would be the happiest moment of his life. Perhaps it was, Conway wrote. Just 2 hours after your letter arrived, he fell sweetly and peacefully asleep, with the sweetest little smile on his face, not to awaken again on this earth. A copy of Armstrong's letter was buried with Douglas Conway. His mother framed the original and displayed it in her home alongside photos of her son and the Apollo 11 crew. And Vincent Conway says the fresh attention on letters sent and received 50 years ago has rekindled fond memories of his family.
If my brother and my mother are anywhere that they can hear, I'm sure they're surprised too, and smiling.
Joe DeShield, WDBJ 7.